people want to sit down, they can, but it's better, yeah, we should gather together.
KB.
Hi, Mayor Libby.
A couple more people on this side.
Hi, T.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm Terry McWilliams.
I know who you are, Terry. I know what you do.
Thank
I know what you do.
Oh, thank you.
You good? All right, are we ready? Everyone ready? All right, good afternoon. I'm Oakland's Mayor Libby Schaaf. And we're here today to give an update on Oakland's ceasefire strategy. Oakland has been committed to ceasefire as its primary way of addressing gun violence in this city. Just a few years ago, we made national headlines with the Oakland Miracle and cut gun violence in half by focusing in on this partnership, this strategy that starts with clear communication to those most at risk of engaging in or being victims of gun violence, that we want everyone to live and be free. That relentless communication and outreach is followed by an offer of services, of life coaches. And it is only if that message is not heeded and those services are not accepted that we bring enforcement as a last resort. Now, we all know that during the COVID pandemic, gun violence in Oakland went back to our pre-ceasefire levels. And what we are here today to report on is a full return of the ceasefire strategy. Ceasefire is back stronger than ever in the year 2022 in Oakland. I want to recognize that we have staffed up our ceasefire unit, and Chief Armstrong is going to share with you the results of several enforcement actions, specifically one last week that was extremely successful at getting a tremendous number of guns off the street, and unfortunately resulting in the incarceration of those who did not heed the relentless ceasefire message and did not accept the services offered to them by the city of Oakland to turn their lives around, to engage in a peaceful lifestyle. I also want to acknowledge that we have doubled down on violence prevention. Our life coaches, our violence interrupters, our hospital-based interventions are up and running and more staffed than they were even prior to the pandemic. And then finally, I want to acknowledge the advocacy that we have done with the court system in partnership with District Attorney Nancy O'Malley. We believe that it is time to roll back many of the changes that were put in place as an emergency measure at the beginning of this pandemic. And those changes to the bail schedule have had unintended consequences and have not made our streets safer. And so we join with District Attorney Nancy O'Malley in urging the Alameda County courts to revise some of the COVID emergency bail policies so that we can return to the policies that were in place prior to the pandemic, that allows our message to be heeded, the services to be accepted, and that allows this partnership that is broad and deep, that includes law enforcement as a last resort, but leads with our faith community, our service providers. We believe that this holistic strategy is going to return Oakland to a place of peace and safety. Now, it gives us no pleasure to report arrests, and certainly we have had ample demonstration of the need to increase the peace on our streets. This heartbreaking loss of life, the harm, the trauma that Oakland families endure as a result of gun violence is wholly unacceptable. And we are pleased today to announce the full return of this holistic strategy and to give some evidence of how the increased communication, increased offer of services, and yes, increased enforcement is making a difference. I want to end by acknowledging Faith in Action. This beautiful coalition of our faith-based community is the organization that demanded Oakland adopt the ceasefire strategy years ago. And they will continue to demand that no matter who is the next mayor in Oakland next year, they will continue to have ceasefire as the primary approach to ending gun violence, preventing it before it even occurs here in Oakland, so that we can be the safe, beautiful, thriving city that we all know Oakland deserves to be. And with that, it's my great pleasure to bring forward Oakland's Chief of Police, LeRonne Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor. Ceasefire continues to be our primary strategy for addressing gun violence in the city of Oakland. A large percentage of the violence committed in the city of Oakland attributed to group and gang violence. The goals of our ceasefire strategy continue to be to reduce group and gang shootings and homicides, reduce recidivism of groups and gangs, by focusing on our strategy of trying to provide prevention and services and support prior to enforcement. We take no pleasure in having to take enforcement action, that we would much rather people accept the services, make different decisions in their lives, and actually make Oakland a better city, a safer city, by putting down guns. But we have made a commitment to the community that for those that pick up guns in our community and use them, they will become the focus of our enforcement efforts. Our last objective is really to develop trust within our community, to build relationships with our community that allow us to actually flourish together. But some people have not accepted the message. Although we've exhausted everything that we could, providing support and services, resources through our Department of Violence Prevention, some individuals have chose to continue to drive gun violence in the city of Oakland. And I want to be clear when I say that the ceasefire strategy has been truly effective. The fact that we have had a reduction in homicides is really a result of the ceasefire strategy. The fact that we've seen a reduction in group and gang violence, again, is a result of the ceasefire strategy. And the fact that we're seeing so many people who have been called into meetings accept services is a result of the ceasefire strategy. But today, I will talk about a couple of enforcement operations that have led to, unfortunately, the arrest of some that have not accepted the message and the recovery of firearms from our community. Ceasefire has conducted more investigations this year compared to 2021 and 2022. So far this year, we've already conducted 14 operations compared to 9 at the same time in 2021 and 10 at the same time in 2020. We have recovered over 35 guns already this year compared to 27 the same time last year and 29 in 2020. We've had one call in so far this year, and attendance has increased. We've seen nearly 90% of those invited attend those meetings, and that's critical to have those that need to hear the message in the room to tell them to put the guns down. There will be a total of 4 call-ins in 2022. March 9th was one of our latest operations. Officers found a total of 7 firearms in this investigation, including assault rifles. The areas where officers located these weapons were in places where we know gang members are hanging out and engaged in certain activity. Several of these guns were what we call personally manufactured firearms, known in the streets as ghost guns. On February 24th, members of our ceasefire team attempted to arrest 2 individuals connected to robberies and carjackings in our city. These 2 individuals took a stolen vehicle and rammed it into our emergency response vehicle, causing significant damage to the vehicle, up over $30,000 worth of damage to that vehicle as they attempted to escape. Officers were able to apprehend these suspects and take them both into custody, both of which were found to be in possession of loaded firearms. On February 24th, our ceasefire team again focused on those individuals that continue to drive violence and who had received the message and continue to be involved in group and gang violence. Officers recovered 5 firearms in this investigation. several of which had high-capacity magazines attached to them. These investigations continue to demonstrate that not only are we seeing weapons of war on our streets, we're also seeing large capacity magazines that are capable of firing up to 100 rounds. Our shot spotter activations continue to demonstrate that when we see these shootings related to group and gang violence, they tend to have several shell casings attached to them, several hundred bullets being fired. Our stats for this year: 2021 was a challenging year for Oakland relative to gun violence. We had 134 homicides and over 600 shootings. That continues to trouble us. I think, to the mayor's point, the trauma that exists in our community is impacting everybody. The fact of the matter is that there's so many families out here that are hurt, that are grieving as a result of losing people that they care about. The ceasefire strategy is not only designed to step in and try to intervene in violence, but to try to reduce retaliation by supporting families, by supporting individuals that would be likely to retaliate as a result of that violence. I think that is key, and that has also led to our reductions. We've seen in 2020 109 homicides. So we've seen increases in both 2020 as well as 2021. When we look at 2019, prior to the pandemic, where the city's seen 78 homicides, it really shows you how effective the ceasefire strategy can be when it's fully implemented. Today, what the mayor spoke to was a full implementation of our ceasefire strategy and a full staffing of our ceasefire units. I've added additional officers to our ceasefire units to increase our capacity and ability to address those that are driving violence in our community. Our staffing right now, currently in our ceasefire unit, consists of 26 officers. It's authorized 32 officers. And as officers continue to graduate from our academy, we will fully staff the ceasefire unit by the end of the summer of 2022. Again, continuing to double down on our promise that once everything else has failed and we have exhausted all other options, that enforcement will be prepared to move forward. And next, I'd like to bring up Pastor Wallace, because the key to the ceasefire strategy really is the partnership that we have with community and those that come out every Friday, that participate in our Friday night walks and support this strategy. Pastor Wallace and other pastors across our city have been tremendous partners in this effort, and we appreciate their support as we do everything we can together to make Oakland a safer city.
Hi, I'm Pastor Michael Wallace, pastor here at the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church here in the city of Oakland. I also have the pleasure of serving as the co-chair of Faith in Action East Bay, along with Pastor Jim Hopkins. I wanted to share with you today that this strategy is so important to the crime reduction in our city. Many years ago, due to the demand and the outcry of parents who were burying their children prematurely due to the surge of gun violence in our city, the community demanded that something be done. As a result, OCO, now known as Faith in Action East Bay, brought the ceasefire strategy to the city of Oakland. We implemented this strategy in Oakland because it was a holistic approach to reduce gun violence, to offer alternatives, to reduce recidivism, and most importantly, to make our city and our streets a safer place. And I stand before you today. We have faith leaders from across the city. We have Bishop Keith Clark of Word Assembly in East Oakland. We have Pastor Brondon and Pastor Maria Reams of Center of Hope in East Oakland. We have Pastor Kevin Barnes, Bishop Barnes of the Abyssinian in the North Oakland, and we have myself here from West Oakland. So we have the whole city, because this is a city issue. This is a citywide problem. And you have faith leaders standing today to say we want to bring peace to our city. We stand in solidarity with the ceasefire strategy. We stand in solidarity with our mayor and our police chief as we implement this strategy to make Oakland a safer place. And I just want to say this, opportunities are abound. Ceasefire offered different options and opportunities for individuals, and the participants in this strategy, many who have taken advantage of it, are doing well. At our most recent call-in, we had a lot of young men there. They seemed quite engaged and appeared to want to do the right thing and take advantage of the opportunities. And so the strategy is effective. Now we have ramped it up, and I'm looking forward to us returning to low homicide rates in the city, to making Oakland a safe city, a city that all the residents can enjoy. And we as faith leaders will do our part. We're here for you, we're here for the families, we're here for the individuals. Reach out to us. We can help guide you and direct you in a way that you can get the help that you need. Again, this strategy is important to this city because it was demanded by the people of the city, and we responded to that cry, and this is what we have now. The Oakland Ceasefire Strategy has been implemented, and I believe that it will make a great difference in this year in reducing gun violence in our city. Thank you.
I'll just add that if anyone wants to personally participate in the Ceasefire Strategy, on Friday nights, Lifelines to Healing conducts Ceasefire Walks in different parts of the city. I went on a walk myself from Pastor Dixon's church, and it is just a joyful thing to be in community, to give a message of peace in a community that has been affected by gun violence, and it is one thing that everyone can do. You can walk down the street in community and share a message of peace. And I will give you the schedule of upcoming walks and how you too can get involved. Any questions? Yeah.
Mayor, where is your chief of violence prevention? Why is he not here?
Guillermo Cespedes is a critical piece of this strategy. The life mentors, the life coaching that we do is all under his supervision. And I think he's looking forward to announcing some other new upcoming strategies that he is interested in deploying. But we also want to make it clear that the men in blue with the badges only come out when the Department of Violence Prevention's efforts have not succeeded. And so today's focus is on the results of the enforcement activities last week. And honestly, that is a failure of our number one priority, which is to prevent violence from happening in the first place.
Mary, you've mentioned how ceasefire is going to be ramping up. Can you kind of break down again what are the actual changes, what are the additions that have been made to the program that will be ramping it up this year compared to previous years?
This year we will be having more call-ins. These are group meetings where this message is delivered very clearly and very strongly. And it is delivered to the people who most need to hear it. People who have engaged in group or gang violence. We know their groups are the most active in the gun violence in Oakland, and we are putting them on notice that if they do not stop, they will be getting more attention than they wish from law enforcement. We are increasing the number and qualities of custom notifications. And these are where a member from the faith community, someone from law enforcement, either a probation officer or a police officer, goes out and delivers this message one-on-one, often triggered by a specific event to the people that need to hear that message right away, especially to prevent retaliatory violence. We will be doing far more custom notifications, and the addition and the quality of the handoff where we connect people to services right there and then. As we're talking with them in the street, in their mother's kitchen, we connect them to services right on the spot. We are also, as the chief mentioned, having more enforcement actions. To the extent that people do not heed the message, we actually have the capacity now to increase the number of investigations and enforcements, sometimes what are called takedowns, than we were able to do in the past 2 years. And then finally, the other change is that due to COVID, the courts suspended and changed many of the policies around bail, as well as protocols around consulting probation and parole officers in the determination about charging, as well as whether or not to hold someone pending trial. There have already been some modifications and improved implementation of those changed policies, but we are now joining with DA O'Malley to ask the courts to return most of those bail policies back to pre-COVID policies. We believe that also will have a profound effect on repeat offense, on recidivism, and also on the cycles of retaliation that ceasefire was designed to interrupt. Did I miss anything as far as things were?
Nope.
And I'm telling you, the walking continued. The walkers, they never stopped walking. And the walking is done outdoors, so even if you're a little COVID nervous, it's very safe. People wear masks, and to be in community is also a wonderful way to participate in Ceasefire. And I don't think it was said, we generally measure the combined shootings and homicides year to date. Shootings and homicides are down by 21% in the city of Oakland. Now, we are not satisfied by that number, but that is the statistic as of this day.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I ask something of the chief?
Please.
Yes.
Okay. So there's a double shooting on Saturday. Couple questions. What's the condition of the female? Is the male confirmed dead? Has there been any arrest? Was the shooter male or female? Motive? And did the victim know the shooter?
You're speaking.
There's a female in custody that's in the hospital.
That was a lot at once, right? Okay. I will say that we did have a shooting. I know what shooting you are speaking of. Yes, unfortunately, the victim in that shooting unfortunately lost his life. The female victim is currently still receiving medical treatment, and so we are still investigating that crime. We do not have a suspect in custody. Obviously, today we are really here to talk about the focus of our enforcement, and that doesn't mean that other incidents aren't going to happen that are not related to our group and gang violence or our ceasefire strategy. But we look at every single shooting and homicide in the city to see if there's some connectivity with our ceasefire groups and gangs. And I think really that's what makes the ceasefire strategy, I believe, really truly evidence-based, because it is really looking at every single shooting, looking at the people involved in that shooting to try to get in front of these incidents. And I also want to recognize the work of the Department of Violence Prevention by increasing the number of violence interrupters that are on the streets. One of the things that they've been doing that's really been helpful is whenever we have a shooting or homicide in the city, they're sending out violence interrupters directly to those homicide or shooting scenes to begin to engage with community members right there on the spot. That's how you intervene in retaliatory shootings, by making contact with those that are affected by these victims being shot, the injuries that are happening out there, to immediately begin to engage and provide support and services for them so that we can deal with that trauma on the spot before people make a bad decision to go and retaliate. So I think that's critically important, that that work is being done, that the department, OPD and Departments of Violence Prevention has partnered on that, and that we're communicating at that level, I think helps to reduce retaliation.